Pride. The first reading is powerful poetry and, yes, powerful metaphysics. The prime mover. We act as though we were the prime mover. All we have received is on loan, but we have energy which has an impact over time and space. It is a participation in divine energy. We orientate time. Here we have a political leader. It's the power of Assyria, self-sufficient, doing it all, not realizing that actually it's in the hand of the supreme prime mover. But then we have this which applies to every human being and is, as I said, both very good poetry and perfect metaphysics. Does the axe claim more credit than the man who wields it? Or the saw more strength than the man who handles it? It would be like the cudgel controlling the man who raises it, or the club moving what is not made of wood. Pride is based on an illusion and is a participation in the original sin of pride of Lucifer. When he had that rebellion in prehistory and pre-time, he did not think that anything but goodness and warmth and bliss could be in the cosmos. Hell did not exist. But from that very moment of precisely illusion with regard to what was his as the most brilliant of creatures, the brightest angel, and the desire to be self-sufficient, from that second, which did not exist because time did not exist, it started. That cosmic jarring note entered in. Paul VI comments on it, and though he does not know what exactly happened, he does indicate that it happened. And we're in it. Because we came into a universe with that jarring note, that hostile force which is against us. Now, if we're not careful, we can fall into that huge Luciferian illusion ourselves. The more success we have, the more the danger is there. I want to give you two examples of graces which went well in one case and badly in another. The first is Francis of Rome, Francesca Romana. She is on the wall of the Vatican, like many saints, and she is known for her involvement with the angelic world. Her life was filled with the supernatural. First of all, she was going to die, but a saint appeared to her, St. Alexis, and covered her with his mantle. A reaction to this miraculous cure was to intensify her spiritual life. Now, she had wanted to be a nun, but she was of noble birth, and she was obliged to marry in an arranged marriage, which actually was a good one. And providentially, the brother of her spouse had a wife who was on her wavelength, Vanozza, and they did many things together. They fashioned two small oratories, one inside the palace and the other in the garden where they could pray. They performed works of charity in a hospital, with Francesca caring for the most loathsome and nauseating patients. So the people spontaneously called these two noble ladies the two saints in Rome. Francesca herself, who had a stronger character, was given a guardian angel whom she could see at times. And that's why she's always presented as being next to an angel. So she could see this angel at times, and this angel would monitor her conduct and correct her. Whenever she committed a fault, the angel gave her a smack. And the sound of these blows from the mysterious hand could be heard by others who happened to be present. Now notice this occasion, because it's linked with this sin, not of pride in her case, but something which is very close to pride, and which we find in proud people. It's a tendency to talk too much. Because what's happening is that we're reigning over others when we do that. We're occupying other people's space. We invade. So this puzzling event happened once when she abstained by human respect from interrupting a frivolous and useless conversation. She received such a hard blow that the bruise remained for days. Now she hadn't actually committed the sin, but she hadn't done anything about it. Now, translated to our world, how many thumps would we deserve from our angel in the course of 24 hours? But this has been perceived also in other situations. There are stories of monastic situations where one gifted monk or nun might see that the angels around, when a conversation became of this nature, were displeased. So that one we can take on board straight away. Am I making an abusive use of the powerful faculty of speech? Because in the Gospel, in the 12th chapter of St. Matthew, verse 36, there is a warning that we will have to answer for every idle word. Again, look at the course of 24 hours. How many idle words will be going on our copybook? Having said that, one can look at what is going on in conversation and analyze the difference between purely frivolous and useless conversation and what is not necessarily completely idle. A concrete example would be this. If one has a character which is upbeat and healing because of a gift of humour, that is not necessarily to be quashed. Why? The Lord gave mankind this natural healing medicine. As we say, laughter is the best medicine. And it can be a great help as one goes through this valley of tears. I have seen that in people dying in great pain, that they were still able to make me laugh. It wasn't there, certainly an abuse of the faculty. And I remember when I was 17, I was to be confirmed the following day by Bishop Mullins there, just outside Cardiff, in Welsh, and I'd gone to the cathedral on the Saturday to get ready, and this holy priest in the box, I said to him that tomorrow to be confirmed, and after giving some good bits of advice, he got to the end of his bit of advice and said, "Congratulations on your confirmation tomorrow. Ask the Holy Spirit for the gift of a sense of humour." Oh, okay. Only years later did I hear that as a word from the Holy Spirit, because actually it is a lifesaver, especially in an enclosed monastic community. Even a silent community, it's done in other ways, but it is done. And in the day, that can be the healer of a painful situation, because things can be sometimes unnecessarily serious and intense, but just that unexpected twist in the tale can make all the difference to bring things down. And also, if it's our mode, it can give the joy of being a welcome presence wherever we go. Why? We create that freshness in the air, that lightness which heals. We're not going to cause pain, we're going to bring a smile. So that's not necessarily an abuse of the faculty, but it's the excessive use of it and disproportionate légèreté, lightness, which is. People who can't be serious at all. There is a big difference, for instance, between the frivolous effervescence, the apparent joy of a pub on a Saturday evening when the crack is 90, compared with, e.g., a conversation in precisely an English monastery where, without raising the voice, a little tickle of humour comes in. It's more sophisticated, and it doesn't lose dignity. So, she was corrected on that one. She eventually lost a dear and holy son who had gifts himself, Evangelista, Giovanni Evangelista, and he appeared to her in great glory. She was thrilled to see her favourite son, who told her that his place in heaven was with the archangels. But he had something else to say, more sobering, but not distressing. When Agnese was born, she thought this one belonged to God, meaning she would become a religious, but that was not the case. Evangelista informed her that God will soon take her. So she died when she was 6 in Francesca's arms. But there were now 2 children of hers in heaven. Now when Evangelista disappeared, the archangel stayed and would remain with Francesca. The child died, and this archangel who was with him appeared as an angel of about 9 years of age, the age of Evangelista himself. So, he appeared to her with this beautiful, brilliant archangel who had the appearance of a child of 9, which is the age apparent of the angel that appeared at Garabandal. St. Michael appeared there at that apparent age, getting through to them at their level, which was their age as well. But he was an archangel. Interesting. So even in the angels, there's no holding on to their glory. But this one was going to be actually very much a part of her life. So the angel stayed and would remain with Francesca. He was always visible to her, but not to others. And again, if she committed a fault, he would disappear temporarily. That's the way he did it, discreetly. He wouldn't give her a thump this time, it was the disappearing act. He gave off, however, such a brilliant light, now this is interesting, that Francesca could read and write in what would otherwise have been total darkness. Something similar to that happened to Malcolm Muggeridge when he was with Mother Teresa. A picture was taken, and there was not sufficient light in those days for that to come out, but there was a brilliant light about her which allowed the picture to come out. Now, it was useful to have this angel because this angel knew things, and was able to tell her things, e.g., such and such is going to kill a such and such, and she would have knowledge, therefore prophetic knowledge, through contact with this archangel. It was thus that several things were going to be important in her life, but that's another day's work. Eventually, after the death of her husband, she was able to be a nun. She had already been involved in the foundation of the Oblates, and when her husband died, she was able to enter the community, and the superior, which she had put there, immediately wanted to abdicate in her favour. And the community voted, and she refused. So there was no pride there. Very different from some who itch to be superior. Remember when I was doing my research on Adam Scott, he was an abbot, and he is a very good psychologist, and he has a description of what goes on in chapter. It goes something like this. They're voting, and each one is under his hood like this, hearing the names of the one that's being voted for. And this one and that one is hearing each name coming up. Oh yes, they're voting for me. Ah, they're voting for me. Ah, they're voting for me. Of course they're voting for me. Of course they're voting for me. No, somebody else. Another, no. It can't be possible they're voting for someone else. And on he goes. So he pinches the bubble and explains, pride is everywhere in the monastery. So this eventually is healed by nothing but obedience, which has actually happened many times in her life before. She has an amazing soul for obedience. Even actually when she was married, it was there. Lorenzo, her good husband, one time she was in the midst of her prayer, because she was very faithful to her prayer, and Lorenzo, the husband, sent for her to do some trivial thing. Without, notice, any irritation, she got up and performed the task, then calmly went back to her office. After that, Lorenzo sent for her 4 more times, and each time she got up to satisfy his requests without the slightest sign of complaint or annoyance. After the 4th time, when she returned to her reading, the antiphon, it was the Office of Our Lady that she was using, the antiphon that she had never finished, she noticed that the letters of the text had turned to gold. Benozza, that's her sister-in-law, who was present, witnessed the miracle, and the archangel whispered to Francesca, "Thus the Lord rewards the virtue of obedience." The gilded letters remained in the book until the day of Francesca's death. So, and it was this same virtue of obedience which would step in here, because her spiritual director commanded her to accept, and only then did she accept. So, she died in great sanctity. When she went to communion eventually, she would go into ecstasy. She was a great mystic, and she knew she was dying, and she was saying, "The heavens open, the angels descend. The archangel has finished his task. He stands before me. He beckons to me to follow him." So there she is on the wall of the Vatican, St. Peter's there, in one of the niches, with an angel. She was dear to us because we were very close to Monte Oliveto, the mother house of the Olivetans in Italy, and they have a great devotion to her. She is the saint of the female oblates, that is, all Benedictines were not enclosed. And close to her, on the wall of the Vatican, is another statue, and it's that of someone who went a different way, Martin Luther. He's got there recently, since the year of Martin Luther. And Interestingly enough, another saint who had a lot to do with angels is part of his story. And it goes like this. He was born in Eisleben in Saxony, and in this feast of his birth, now a long time ago, over a century ago, there was another mystic, similar to this one. Her name was Sister Maria Serafina Micheli, who was foundress of a congregation dedicated to angels, Sisters of the Angels. She was by chance passing through that place, not knowing what the significance of it was. And she saw this great concourse of people about to celebrate something there. We had no clue, she had no clue what it was about. But then she was looking for a church to make adoration in that day, that evening when she got off her train or whatever it was she was travelling in. And she found this church and found the door was closed, so knelt in front of the front door to make adoration to the tabernacle inside, thinking the Blessed Sacrament was there. But then this angel, with which she had a lot to do, nudged her. Get up, for this is a Protestant church. And it was explained to her that the saint of that event, Martin Luther, was not where people thought he was. Therefore, if they knew, they wouldn't be visiting him in that way. That was the hint. And she showed him where he was and why he was there. And it was pride. The angel said so. He wanted to see where he'd ended up because of his pride. And on that particular vice, she was extremely severe to her sisters. She would not tolerate one manifestation of pride. Why? It's that subtle vice which is the last to go. We were taught that information. You have an orange, you squeeze it, and it's all out. You keep on squeezing, it's all out, you think, and then there's one last squeeze and one tiny drop comes out, yet it's pride. So we were warned about that. If we're not dead, we won't live. Now, pride came into great noises, great people of history, because they became self-sufficient, as in the first reading. Beware. Humility is not in any way false. False humility is actually a subtle form of pride. We recognize a gift that we have, but deflect the attention and thank the giver for it. Holding on to it is owning it, as Lucifer did. So true humility is neither more nor less, but it's an abdication over and a handing back to. But there's one manifestation of a subtle pride. It's what I said in the beginning, an invasion of others, talking too much, reigning over their sacred space.